Hey, what's going on, good people? It's Gardner Douglas, your oyster ninja. I'm here today with the great, but new but great, oyster farm out of the South. That is Grayson Bay.
That's right.
All right,
Grayson Bay Oyster Company.
Grayson Bay Oyster Company, man. I found you on Instagram, or you found me, but we found each other, man. And basically, I just wanted, and oh man, I just told him the story, but my nose is kind of leaking. I just ate some hot wings. Y'all gotta excuse me. But tell us a little bit about Grayson Bay, man.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, the name is Grayson Bay, and it's named after my two sons, Grayson and Balin. Um, so that's where the name comes from there. The logo has two seagulls in it, and that also represents them as well. So um, we're relatively new. We just planted 100,000 oyster seed in March from the Great L3 hatchery. And we were approved back in December. It took us a little over about a year for the permitting process and everything like that. Um, but my background, I'm a biologist, environmental scientist. I work for a utility. And so I work on the boat and surface water and do surface water sampling, biological studies. And I've done that for a long time. But just looking for something, to do on my own, to get the family involved with, just taking a risk to do something on my own. And I'll tell you what, I was on a plane headed up to American Fisheries Society conference up in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And this was in the summer of 2018. And I was reading an article in the Savor magazine, and it had an article in there about Pico oysters. I'm sure you know who Pico is and everything like that. It had a great interview in there with the owner and how he found himself with an oyster company. Being laid off in the financial industry, and found that there was an oyster farm for sale and took a risk and bought it. That article really resonated with me immediately on the plane. And when I landed and got to the hotel before the conference, I started looking, you know, southern oyster farming and things. Because I remember when I was in like college and things, was quite a few years ago, there was nothing like that in the Gulf. Something very popular, obviously on the East and West Coast, but in the Gulf, just non-existent. We had quite a wild population harvest. Everybody, that's what we do down here. But I was pretty surprised to see that there was a burgeoning and brand new oyster farming community down here in the Gulf. And so even that evening, I started firing off emails and things to Bill Walton and Oyster South, and just doing a little bit more research. And it was just something that it clicked so quick. I knew at that point that I had a new future coming. And so I started laying the groundwork and asking people about it, and then joined Oyster South and started meeting with those people, and then shortly joined Instagram, started reaching out to different folks, and it just really steamrolled. And man, I'll tell you what, the oyster community is it's awesome. It's very supportive. I found that like Instagram and social media is just really great for meeting people and conversing and solving problems and things like that. And so, I'm really excited about our opportunity with Grayson Bay. I think we have a great name. We've got a great brand. I think we've got a great story. And I know we're going to produce a great oyster.
No doubt, man. That is a great story, man.
Yeah.
So it seems like you had all the connections and everything just lined right up, man. It was like meant to be. You read the story, and it hit you. It hit home. So, and you wanted to get the family involved. What did the wife say when you came home and say, "Hey, I want to be an oyster farmer"?
I actually think I talked to her that evening and just kind of threw it out there that I'd read this article, and it just kind of hit me, you know. And there's not very many moments in life that I think you have that aha moment, you know. And you kind of wish, well, maybe I should have done that sooner, or not. But when I talked to her about it, she's like, oh, okay, all right, you know, well, let's see how it goes, do a little bit more research, talk to some people and all that. But I'll tell you one thing, my wife has been super supportive about this whole thing. She knows that it's a passion of mine, like from the get-go. She's like, you're going to be so good at it. Like, it's your background. It's what you really enjoy. You love food. You love the water. You love oysters. And you love hard work. And so it's everything that you like. And, you know, that's just not what I get from working, you know, as an environmental specialist at a utility. You know, it's compliance work. It's a lot of office work, a lot of permitting and things like that. And it just doesn't necessarily, you know, drive that fire, you know, like, this is what I want to do, you know. So she has been amazing, absolutely amazing with the whole thing. I mean, I expect her to be like, well, because we're really risk averse, you know. And
Right.
Starting your own business, and especially like on the side of your real job, that's going to be really demanding. You know, I expected her to be a little bit more, you know, adverse to it. Like, I think that's too much. I don't know, you know, but no, she's been all on board 100%. And, you know, even with what's going on with COVID and the risks and the unknowns, you know, we're pushing forward. You know, we've got 100,000 in the water now. We have another 150,000 coming later this year. The one thing we'll probably do is kind of restrain back a little bit. You know, I think that's the fortunate thing that we have is we are just starting right now. So we don't have a lot of overhead. We don't have a lot of product to push, you know, so we can kind of enter as we need to, kind of slowly, and kind of, you know, protect what we have and not grow too big too fast in this unknown time.
Right. So how did your family and friends take it? Because you're right, there is a big difference in culture, just Florida culture and Gulf oysters, compared to wild oysters and farm raised. So was it like pushback, like, we want big Gulf oysters, we don't want those fancy cocktail size oysters?
So my family, you know, we enjoy like the boutique oyster, you know. We've kind of always grown up like enjoying the cold water farm raised oysters. And so um although, you know, I think there's a product and a place for wild, what we call beefsteak oysters, because they are great for being grilled, fried, baked, you know, where, you know, farm raised oyster doesn't really typically, you know, hold up to that. You know, it's not meant for that market. So, but, you know, there is, the culture here is wild oyster. You know, that's typically how people were raised, cheap oysters, buying by the sack for, you know, not very much, and
Right.
sit on the back of a pickup truck, or, you know what I mean,
Yeah, no
around
doubt.
a
Yep.
campfire. And so that's what people are used to. But, you know, the one thing is the wild stock is not where it used to be.
That's a
And, you
good
know,
point.
I think, you know, Apalachicola, they haven't had a harvest there in like 3 or 4 years, I think, a wild harvest, you know. And over the years, the water wars with Apalachicola River and Georgia and Alabama, you know, fighting for the water, starved the oyster beds of fresh water. And then with the BP oil spill, um, everybody rushed out there and took everything, you know, because it was like they didn't know there was going to be anything left. So they just went out there and took it. So those beds are pretty decimated. You know, those are famous oysters that we'll probably see come back again. The state's putting some money into it, but nothing like it was. And then obviously with Louisiana, um, they've just been decimated with floodwaters over the last few years, and then the BP oil spill. So it's just been one thing over the next. And so we're going to have to rely on farm raised Gulf oysters. And so I think there's going to have to be a whole mind shift on the expectation of what used to be, what is, and what's the future.
Right, right. So, excuse me.
Mhm.
So, dang, where are your oysters at right now in the process? You said you have 100,000 out now. So,
Yeah, so we expect probably our first harvest will be in September, right around September, October. So
and
they,
what's your
they were
location again? Like, where are the oysters at?
yeah, sure. Pensacola. We're in Pensacola Bay, Pensacola, Florida, also known as the Emerald Coast. Down
Right.
here in Florida, I saw when you spoke to Nicolette, she's the Treasure Coast shellfish, and down here in Florida, we have a lot of named coasts,
Mm-hmm.
where Panacea and all that is. It's the Forgotten Coast, and so you've got Space Coast and Treasure Coast, but yeah, we're the Emerald Coast.
Did your background, with the water samples and everything, help with like picking a location as far as where you wanted your oyster grounds to be?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, I think are we okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So I was able to kind of do some desktop research, look where I wanted to put the farm. I wanted to be as south from the river as like we could. We have most of the farms are north of me, but also put them in at more risk of fresh water, too much fresh water, and then also for hurricanes. Um, if we have an oncoming storm, those north winds, those farms will be decimated. And so I put mine on the south side of the bay, right next to a barrier island, to try to get some protection and adjacent to a bridge. So I took storms into consideration, and then I wanted a really nice bottom. And so we're in 4 foot, 3.5, 4 foot of just sand, quartz sand. So we have a nice firm bottom and no mud. So which is really pretty nice.
Do you think like the storms will be your biggest obstacles, or what's your biggest obstacle you think as far as farming oysters down there?
Storms are definitely a big concern. Being in the electric utility, we had Hurricane Michael in Panama City, and I did 2 weeks living out of a suitcase out of my work truck, trying, helping those folks get out and back up and running, and just seeing what the storms can do as far as damage, and then knowing what they did to the folks over in Panacea, Apalachicola area, where those farms took a pretty good beating too. It wasn't a direct hit. Um, but I would say hurricanes and too much fresh water. Where we are in Pensacola Bay, we've got so we have the Escambia River, which is the main feeder, and then we have two other rivers that come on the other side, so called East Bay. So and those go up into Alabama quite a ways. So whatever happens upstream will end up coming downstream. And so we had another farm here, Pensacola Bay Oyster Company. I think in their first year in 2017, they had an entire crop loss due to too much fresh water.
Wow, that's crazy. That's hard, man.
Yeah. So, you hope that you get a couple good years, and then put money away for when the bad year comes, So I think the estimates are to know that you're going to lose your farm, like all your crop, probably once every 10 years, somewhere in there. And so you need to just try to put money away for those bad days.
Right, right. What else has helped you, like, because like this is literally like the beginning stages of your oyster farming. Like what else has helped you, like far as like, I don't know, maybe like research or reading material or key people?
Yeah. So I will say probably the biggest influence has been Oyster South. They
Shout out.
Yeah, yeah, great. Just those group of people and that platform that they have has created such good collaboration. I've gained some really good friends that I talk to on the regular who have oyster farms. So, I mean, from Louisiana, Alabama, North Carolina, obviously here in Florida. Um, I communicate with those people all the time. Lessons learned, what equipment they use. It's just all because of Oyster South. Without that, meeting those people just it would be more difficult. And then, so Oyster South was formed with Beth and Bill Walton. And Bill Walton is also known as Dr. Oyster down here at the Auburn University. Also been very, very helpful. But he's such a knowledgeable man, and they're just such good people, that work with that organization. And so, like Brian Rackley out of Kimball House, and Watchman's super instrumental in pushing Oyster South, but promoting Southern oysters and having a platform to let them shine. So, and then obviously just tons of research, man. I spend a lot of evenings just researching, just trying to see what other people do, what's out there.
So what's going to be what's your methods of farming?
So right now we're water column only. We can't do any bottom culture because it's critical habitat for Gulf sturgeon. So everything has to be floating for the most part. I guess I could do some long line, but that's not what I'm looking for. So right now we're trying a new product by Zapco. It's a floating bag that has submersible floats on it. So we're trying that out now. We've got I think about 113 bags out there right now. And then I also have another type of equipment that I'm working with hexapods. So it's 3 hexal baskets kind of conjoined together with 2 11-liter Go Deep floats on it. So I think I'm making those on my own, but I think if you want to see pictures, Hooper's Island has some picture of what a hexapod would look like. Cape Fear uses them as well. And what I'm trying to do is, since I'm trying to do this on my own for the most part, I'm trying not to break my back too much. And so you've probably seen those floating cages.
Oh yeah.
Those are no small feat. And so trying to avoid using cages just because, if you're a one-man show, you have to use a derrick crane and trying to do all that and manhandle those things. And so trying to make it to where it's a little bit lighter, a little bit easier to do with, minimal staff and equipment. So
right. So you said you didn't really want to fool with the long lines. So like what's the big difference like as far as like growing oysters in the bags versus long lines or different processes?
Well, and here's the other thing with the long line, it's pretty unsightly. And so I've got some houses within sight. So I'm within sight of those houses. I have the bridge as my background, so I'm not totally obscuring their view. But in other parts of the country, like particularly North, South Carolina, there's been a lot of NIMBYs, not in my backyard, pushback, particularly on some oyster farms. And the long line system, it's just a little unsightly. So if you're fortunate to be in an area where you don't have people looking at them, I think it's a great system. I know Murder Point uses it, and they have a beautiful oyster. I know landing them in it's pretty popular in Panacea area. But if it's down here, since we don't really have a tide, you have to manipulate it.
Gotcha.
So, you're having to walk down that long line and manually raise and lower those bags all the way down that line. And so,
yeah, that's work.
Yeah, that's work. And so for me, from what I've seen, those oysters, what we have in the bags they're getting tumbled pretty good. So, which is nice. That's what you want. That's what creates that deep cut. But I'm able just to go, swim or walk down that line and just flip the bags, just one at a time, just go right on down. So, so far seems to be working out pretty well.
So as the new kid on the block, like where do you see like oyster farming in the next, 5 years in Florida?
So I think
5, 10 years, just the future.
Yeah, I think the future is really bright. We're getting a lot more restaurants in Central Florida coming on board with Florida oysters, and if we can start really promoting regionally, we call it the Florida Oyster Revival. So, since we've had the Apalachicola oysters and a lot of the oyster beds have been pretty decimated, same thing here in Pensacola. We don't really have a lot of wild beds. I think the future is really bright. Our tourism industry in Florida alone, I mean, is giant. And so when we have people, tourists who come, from out of town, I think they're going to want to try some Florida oysters. Also, Florida has a huge coastline. It's massive, so when you just take that into account, the future is going to be really, really bright. Some of the unknowns are going to be how long is this coronavirus is going to take, and then one thing that's also going to take some time is hurricanes. That will typically take people out, and then it takes a lot of capital just to get into it. And so there's also another reason why we went with the bags. It's just a little bit less capital up front. Trying to do it on our own, but I'm really excited. I think we are definitely getting in on the ground, and I think we're going to really see a huge increase in popularity of not only Gulf, but just Florida oysters in general. So I think that as long as we can, I think there's a negative connotation with Gulf oyster. I think it's just what people really have historically known. It's just that wild beefsteak, muddy, gnarly looking oyster, and just look what Murder Point has done. And they've created a niche market for who would have thought an Alabama oyster, would be at Hog Island or going to some of the nicest oyster bars in the country, and he goes to the Food and Wine Festival in Miami every year. So, I mean, when you think of Alabama, you don't necessarily think of a boutique oyster, but they've done it, and he's worked hard. He's pushed it. I may not have the marketing skills or the personality of Elaine, but but I'll tell you what, I'm happy to stand alongside him. We're not that far, Pensacola and Alabama. We're right next to each other, so I think we have a lot of room to grow, and I think the future is bright for all of us down here.
Nice, man. That's one of the best parts to me, far as like shucking and just dealing with oysters, man. Just meeting different personalities, man, because it does help. The oysters count, but the personality, helps also.
Yeah, absolutely, it sure does. And I don't think I told you our slogan. Our slogan is "Let the tide be your guide."
Let the tide be your guide. Nice.
And so, and then we're going to coin our brand of oysters title guides.
Nice.
Yeah, so we think it's going to be great because, the tides are always changing. The oysters will never be the same. So the experience will always be new. And so I think it's going to be important for us to relay that information to the restaurants and the shuckers and things like that so they can pass that along. Because I think the one thing a lot of people also get kind of just caught up on is I've had that oyster one time and it was really salty and it was, I want that. I'm going to have that again,
Right.
And so that's not necessarily going to be the case all the time. So, some areas that have more ocean influence may have more stability. But ours are always going to be changing, and I think that's exciting,
Oh yeah, for sure.
because you're going to be able to play with different flavors, different toppings, different sauces, and things like that to really take advantage of the profile of the oyster at that time.
And that's also like a selling point just to the chefs, because and a talking point for the oyster shuckers presenting your oyster at the raw bar, just letting people know, hey, you might have this week and it's going to taste this way, but if you come back in a couple weeks or a month, it might have a different flavor to it. So, I love that, man. Just having that knowledge about the oysters and pushing good oysters.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's just like in North Carolina, so you get those green gills in the wintertime.
Right.
It's the same oyster as in the summertime, but it's just the algae, the algae is different in the wintertime. And so, they can basically have two different brands of oysters, one for the winter and one for the summer. But I think it's fantastic. I think it's such a huge advantage when you're able to kind of, let people know up front, like it's not going to be the same every time,
Yeah.
so because I've seen people, because I worked in the restaurant industry when I was going through college and at an oyster bar, and people are used to a certain oyster, or tasting the same each time. So
What's your favorite oyster?
oh man, I don't know if I really have one. I've had so many. um I think I would say that I'm a little partial to Pacific oysters.
Okay.
I just, they're pretty awesome. In my opinion, I think they're just super sweet, really plump. Um, but I don't have a favorite way of prepared either. I just love oysters. It could be fried, baked, steamed, raw. It doesn't matter. But yeah, I'm not too biased on that.
How old are the kiddos? Do they eat oysters?
So Balin is 6 and Grayson is 4. Balin, Grayson, he won't eat it, but he likes the juice.
Right.
So he likes the brine.
Yeah. That's how we got my son eating. He just was the juice drinker, and then all of a sudden, oh, this is good. Let me get another one.
Yeah.
He's been expensive ever since.
Yeah. So I've got some great photos of us like putting the oysters in, and when we first got the seed and everything, and having them help out. I mean, it's just fantastic. And then going out to the farm and taking the boat out, having them go out there and swim out there with me and touching the bags and all that stuff. It's just that's what it's about. It's about family. It's about community. It's about the conversation, and oysters do all of that. So
yeah, and definitely about embedding that that part of nature in them young. I think that's missing in a lot of young people, a lot of kids, man. They just miss a portion of that. Like if you're not like near the coast or, water, you miss all of that. Even just something simple as like fishing or crabbing,
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I think that's so important for social media and telling that story of like that, because a lot of people who are going to maybe enjoy your oyster don't have the access like we do. And so if they're able to follow you on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and see you out there with your family, or seeing how you're working your farm and your oysters and doing that, I mean, that just takes them to your place. And that's one thing oysters do, is they transcend people to a place. So I think it's such a great world. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited for people to try out oysters.
Beautiful, man. When do you think it's gonna be? Have you had your first harvest yet?
Not yet. So we're thinking it's going to be about September or October.
Okay,
We'll
cool.
have our first round.
Nice. Keep me posted, man, and just
Absolutely.
So where can my listeners and the good people, man, viewing this on YouTube, where can we find you at, man?
So we are on Instagram and Facebook. You can just Google Grayson Bay Oyster Company. We're also Grayson Bay Oysters. And we have a website, Grayson Bay Oysters.com. And keep a lookout. You can follow our progress, man. It's pretty awesome.
It is, man. And they have the pleasure of watching it from the beginning.
They do. And that's if you went back into the Instagram, you can go all the way back to the beginning for sure. And
that's what I did. I went to like the first post, like the boat, and I was like, wow, okay, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't have it from the very beginning. They wait until they have the farm set up and oysters and ready to harvest and everything. But started early, man. Start that groundwork. Just laying it out there. And if people ever want to go back and see, the beginning, they can. They can go all the way back and see the process.
Do you have any advice for like a beginning oyster farmer or somebody interested, or like what advice would you give, man?
The advice I would have is you better have some patience, because the permitting process is long, so you better be committed, because it's a long process. And do your research, pick a good site, um, and find the right people and start talking to them. Um, you know, but you have to be committed. It's going to be a lot of hard work, and it's very rewarding. That's for sure.
No doubt, man. Appreciate you for taking
Yeah.
time out today, man. And I know you got the kiddos and the wife and everything, and of course the baby oysters. But
Yeah, I'm trying to see if they're outside. I'm actually looking outside. I don't know where they are, but they were running around out here.
right. How's that been, man, with the kids and out of school and all? Well, I guess they're kind of young still, but
Yeah, so they are young, so they need a lot of attention, and so both my wife and I are working remotely right now. Both of our jobs are pretty demanding, which is pretty challenging. So my wife is set up in our bedroom with a little desk and computers, and I'm in the guest bedroom. So we have a little schedule, how we work with the kids, as far as trying to get some work done, and then we got to do some school work and lessons and online classes and all that. And so it's been definitely challenging, and but fortunately work has been, and managers, they're all in the same situation. So you know we're just trying to make the best of it, try to stay healthy. It's a little sad, that the kids can't hang out with their friends and be with their classmates. And my son's gonna be graduating from kindergarten, so, and he doesn't get to have that, so they just think, they keep saying, this is the longest spring break ever. you know
right.
so, but it's a challenge, but it's a special time. I think we'll look back on this, and miss it, because it's so much togetherness, and you're forced to have to do it. um but I think the benefits also pretty huge, just so much family time.
I think what this has done for me, man, not that you asked, but what this has done for me is really made me step up to the plate, man, and just be more dad, more husband, because my wife is working home. So, I still go out for work. So when I come home, even though I'm tired, she has been working and still with the kids. So, it's just more appreciation to her, man. And and it's brought me closer with my son. My son is 5 and my daughter is 1. And, I've been loving this time, even when I'm just tired. But like when things go back, man, it's just, you're just gonna enjoy your family more and appreciate things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing, and hopefully everything kind of opens back up and everybody can stay safe, and hopefully schools will be back open, for the fall, and we'll get back into a groove. But yeah, this is a special time. I think, just being forced to have to stay together and be home. It's you don't get it back, so you don't get the
Exactly.
childhood back.
No doubt, man. Appreciate you again, man. And
Yeah,
until the next time, hopefully we can catch back up with you when you get your first harvest, or just updating news or something. You know what I mean?
absolutely. So I'm waiting on a hat from you. Still in the mail, I'm thinking.
Okay.
But
Let me know. Let me know.
we're working on some gear. We're working on some hats and some shirts. So I'll let you know, and definitely get you some up there so you
Of
can
course, man. No
represent
doubt.
represent Florida and Grayson Bay.
Yeah, I'm kind of hating on that Oyster South hat, man. That's a pretty sweet hat.
No, and this is an oldie. It's a little faded, but I
No, they're
love
the
them.
best ones, man.
They still sell them. So
Okay.
we we'd love to have you come down and hang out at the Oyster South Symposium sometime. Hopefully we'll get to have one next year. We were in Wilmington this year, right before the virus stuff hit in February. So it's supposed to be in New Orleans next year, I think. So we'll see how it goes. They flip-flop coasts.
Right, right.
So,
Okay.
but we get some food bloggers and chefs and everybody else too, with the, mingle with the farmers.
Every year I want to hit it, man. And I just with the kids and everything, man. You know how it is.
It's hard.
It's very hard. But man, you be safe, man, and wear your gloves and your mask, and keep them
Oh, yeah.
kiddos, safe. And again, appreciate you for taking time out your day, man.
I appreciate it, Gardner. Thank you so much, man. We'll
All
be in
right.
touch.
Okay, be safe. Let's see here. Still learning, still learning.
I like the background, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a little fancy with my the little background. Hold on, let me see here.